So it was just to have that and this color and this depth and this density as you lose the moisture and you lose that rigor mortis and you allow those natural enzymes start to work their magic within the meat. As long as you have the right atmosphere and climate, I mean, he hangs the deer we ate. I ate it raw. It was hanging in there for 65 days. I took little pieces off and I was like, this looks, I'm sorry, there is no danger in eating this raw. We put a little shoyu on it, a little soy sauce and let it, hang out for 20 seconds and then real thin kind of just to kill maybe, just for peace of mind and for flavor. But it was 4 people ate it. No one got sick. I probably had 4 ounces of it. And it was some of the best tartare I've ever had in my life.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Sig Sauer. Sig is a leading provider and manufacturer of firearms, electro-optics, ammunition, air guns, and suppressors. For over 250 years, Sig Sauer Inc. has evolved and thrived by blending American ingenuity, German engineering, and Swiss precision. Today, Sig Sauer is synonymous with industry-leading quality and innovation, which has made it the brand of choice amongst the U.S. military, the global defense community, law enforcement, competitive shooters, hunters, and responsible citizens. Sig Sauer is also a premier provider of elite firearms instruction and tactical training at the Sig Sauer Academy located in New Hampshire. For more information about Sig Sauer and its complete line of products, visit sigsauer.com. Brad, welcome to the show. We've been talking back and forth about guns and cooking and hunting stuff for quite a while, and we've been trying to make this podcast happen for like 6 months. I'm stoked that we finally both had the time to do it. How are you?
Yeah, well, thanks again, man, and thanks for having me. And most of those delays and annoying hangups, I will take full responsibility for. It's usually the case, with working from home right now. And getting ready to move myself from the New York City area a little bit. It's just been a little chaotic and having to, my line of work, I shoot a bit of video at home sometimes. And it's just been getting things to line up has been a little crazy. I don't know if you have kids yourself. I have 2 young boys and ages in May, they'll be 5 and 3. And they're just, man, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but my God, talk about 2 bulls in a china shop.
Now, have they gone hunting with you yet?
My oldest, I mean, we can call it hunting. We've certainly taken some walks in the woods. More, not so much, maybe squirrel hunting.
Yeah.
I guess we could call it squirrel hunting. We didn't shoot anything, but, it was the idea of it. And kind of breaking in a new, for lack of better description, I just want them to be familiar around guns and the sound of a gun and just have it, I kind of compare it to introducing a puppy bird dog to it. You know what I mean? I don't want my kid or any of my kids or anyone for that matter to hear that sound of even if it's a 22 long rifle, which is what I'm talking about, to have it not be scary or startling, because my experience in my childhood, it was not. It was quite the opposite. It was actually an introduction of excitement and ended up leading to food and just passions for life. So I just really, having kids, I just want to kind of try to be able to instill that into them.
That's awesome. How old were you when you started hunting?
Yeah, so probably, I guess I don't know. I mean, as soon as I had interest or my mom let my dad let me hold a gun or something. So it's funny you say. So I remember my first gun, and I think it is probably one of the best starter guns in the world, and I give all the credit to my dad. But I would have to answer your question quickly. 9, 10. I don't know what time was the first time I tried to shoot, a soda can or a clay bird or something. But my first gun, I remember my dad giving it to me. He held it, he owned it, but it was, this Brad, this is your gun. It was a break action, single shot, 20 gauge shotgun. And there's no mistake. It's if that gun's broken, it might as well be a hammer. You know what I mean? Like it's a very, I think that's what that gun was designed for the most part, right? So having that, and then just the introduction to like a 22, where it was like, I think it was like a Remington, you know, it had like the under barrel, you could put like 10, 13 rounds or whatever state you're in. And it was just a little plinker, you know, and just shooting things like that. But getting into hunting, it was at an early age. I mean, my dad, I come from a really unique situation in New Jersey, where my dad was like a legend, man. He was, you know, we went frogging, we caught snapping turtles, we went bow hunting, we did, you know, I went shooting grouse, taking woods in every Thanksgiving. We went pheasant and chucker hunting with my uncle and, you know, and some of his friends and stuff. So like living in an area that isn't normally known for its hunting to people who aren't already aware of it, New Jersey was just a really cool spot for me. And I was very fortunate to get into it at an early age. And, you know, what's so important about that is that it really, and like, you don't really recognize it or realize it until you're a little older, but man, it was such a vital component in the building of the foundation of the man I am today.
It's an interesting relationship today between hunting and cooking. And I think it's always been an interesting relationship, but it hasn't always been the same person that did both. You know, for most of human history, those are two different people. And now we're kind of coming into a time where there's an expectation that if you hunt, you also have to cook and do so creatively. And there's this strange like offshoot of culinary arts within, I don't even know if art is the right word, but within hunting, where it's sort of this fear factor thing. It's like we're eating eyeballs and buttholes and like the inside of a beaver's toenails,
tripe and tongue, and it's just doesn't need to be that way.
Sure, and you know that's interesting. It's intriguing. We all want to use as much of the animal as we can, but for a lot of non-hunters, that's the way that they are viewing this. It's like, oh, and every time I take somebody that's new out and start working on an animal, they're like, you know, do you know that there's fat behind the eyeball? I'm like, yeah, I do. But you know, I'm
not starving to death either.
There's some other stuff that we can do here. I mean, I know fermentation is a lot of what you do. Do you consider that, you know, your expertise or like the core of your culinary stuff? No?
Yes. I mean, to answer your question quickly, no. I mean, I didn't pick up fermentation until relatively recently in my life. And my parents, I don't come from a family of fermenters. You know that no one did any kind of rotting unless they just forgot something in the fridge or in the garage or something. You know, some accidental fermentation. And that was all new to me. And my passion for it was just kind of like a good timing to where I was introduced to it a little bit. And it was just, I like projects, and then I also like, you know, I like science, and I like health, and I like understanding the importance of gut health and microorganisms in your gut biome, and how important that is to, you name it, from diabetes to cancer to just general nutrition, right? And just overall well-being. So like they kind of played two and two. And then once you open that little bit of that massive, you know, rabbit hole that you can go down, it's a beautiful thing. And it's tied into a lot of foods, people that don't even, you know, necessarily, you know, think of fermentation. You know, you go get it from your favorite Thai restaurant, and get some pad Thai, and what's that real distinct flavor, that little fish sauce in there or something. That's just rotted fish with salt in a big barrel somewhere real hot for 6 months. Like, it's so old. It's basically, you know, it's the original refrigeration, you know, being able to preserve food. So it ties in so beautifully with my love for you know, farming and growing things and cooking and hunting, to where it's like, yeah, those some of these things, whether it's canning or fermenting, can really tie those old ways of preserving food. That was, I mean, God, there couldn't be something more relevant to hunting, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, we grew up hanging meat for a long time, and if we had the right weather conditions and the time of year, we would have a deer or an elk hanging in the shop until we were done eating it. You know, we weren't butchering that animal. We're going out and cutting off whatever we wanted to cook for the night.
That's right.
And there'd be big layers of mold on the outside. Just take some vinegar on a rag and wipe it off. And, you know, I really didn't think anything of it. And then I kind of got shamed about that a little bit later in life. And like, oh, that's not how you treat meat. That's bad. And I was like, oh man, I can't believe I survived. And
I
then
guess we've been doing it wrong for 7,000 years or whatever, you know?
Yeah. You know, and then I ended up meeting our mutual friend, Eli Cairo, and, you know, all he does is ferment meat. Like that's his
Right.
jam. And getting to walk around his place in Portland and seeing all this moldy, furry meat that was so delicious, it was incredible. And the palate is incredible. It's an amazing thing. And I'm really glad to see it come back. And, you know, I've had this conversation with other guests who, you know, take it to like rotting meat in Africa, where it rots really, really quickly, and how healthy these people are that consume it.
Sure.
It's an amazing thing.
Well, you know, it's amazing when you find out how beneficial it is to work with nature instead of against it. You know, like it's unnatural to have an electric refrigerator, you know, but in the right climates, hanging a piece of meat, like, makes total sense. And like controlled rot, you know, that's what fermentation is. And that's basically what, maybe not so much what dry aging is, because you're not really rotting, but like you're starting that decomposition, that natural cycle of this animal is no longer alive and pumping hot blood. And you know, and like, it's funny. It's awesome that you mentioned you grew up with hanging, you know, deer or animals that matter. And that's been around forever, right? But like for me, and I feel like for a lot of people, like when my dad killed a deer, and like he just didn't know any better, you know what I mean? Like it's how he was taught. Now his dad was taught or whatever. But like you killed that deer, he gutted it, and he was hanging it from my swing set in the yard when I was little, and you know, as fast as he could get it broken down and into the freezer, that was how you got the best product. And like science, and it's not really the case, you know, like it's actually a terrible idea. And like I've made some new friends. I got a good buddy of mine up in where I'm going to be living soon, up in coastal Connecticut. And man, some of the best venison I ever had. And the first guy I see to like have hanging a whole, just like how you were describing, hanging a whole white-tailed deer, just cleaned out, skinned, you know, and just hanging there and just having all this bloom and growth on the outside. And it's like, hey, Vin, you know, what are you doing? We're going to be up at Dan tonight. And he's like, oh, I'll bring a steak by. I'll go. He built himself a little walk-in, you know, and he'll just cut these steaks off of this animal. And you get this, like, the last time I was up there and we had dinner, he cut this steak. I posted on Instagram, this steak off of this hind leg, and it looked like tuna. And it had this tenderness and depth, like a backstrap met a fillet, you know, a backstrap met like, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, yeah, let's just say like a backstrap. You know, it had like, it was tender and it was just full of flavor. Not that a leg isn't, but like, it just didn't, like most people take leg and that's burger, that's stew meat or something, you know what I mean? Like, so it was just to have that and this color and this depth and this density as you lose the moisture and you lose that rigor mortis and you allow those natural enzymes start to work their magic within the meat. As long as you have the right atmosphere and climate. I mean, he hangs the deer I ate it raw. It was hanging in there for 65 days. I took little pieces off and I was like, I'm sorry, there is no danger in eating this raw. We put a little shoyu on it, you know, a little soy sauce, and let it, you know, hang out for 20 seconds, and then real thin kind of just to kill maybe, you know, just for a peace of mind and for flavor. But it was 4 people ate it. No one got sick. I probably had 4 ounces of it, and it was some of the best tartare I've ever had in my life.
So I get excited. I'm kind of ahead of myself. Why don't you explain, you know, briefly or in as much detail as you'd like, what it is you do for a job? Like, who are you?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, like you said, my name is Brad Leone, and I've been basically how I got into fermentation and food on like a bigger scale and on a public image scale was I started working with Bon Appétit Magazine here in New York, and that is where I really had the ability. I started off as test kitchen manager. Well, basically, I started off as test kitchen assistant about nine years ago. I was a glorified dishwasher, but I just wanted to get my foot in the door and get into this world that is more than just restaurants. You know, like I love restaurants. I grew up in and out of restaurants, but the food industry was so much more. So I really wanted to, long story short, I left this farmhouse swinging a hammer in New Jersey with some friends as a job. And I took a loan out and found a house on Craigslist in Brooklyn with about 6 roommates as strangers. And moved there. I took a loan out, went to culinary school, and got an internship at Bon Appetit. And yeah, just kind of worked my way up. I said, just get me in the door, man. I'll wash the dishes. It's better than freaking roofing a house in August. I'll tell you that much. So it can't be too much. We're Monday through Friday. I'm cooking and eating. This is great. And learning, keyword learning. I was learning and being exposed to all types of new stuff. So yeah, to fast forward, video started to take off a little bit, and I really kind of developed myself into a host, a video personality, we could say. So, and then it started off, really big projects in the test kitchen at for Bon Appetit, doing fermentation, kombucha, sauerkraut, miso, kimchi, dried fruits, jerky, and then what I always wanted to do was get into telling stories, and telling. Where I thrive is with storytelling with other people. I like I'm fun, I'm great, we can have fun, whatever, but I like other people. There's a lot of really beautiful, awesome people doing really awesome things who people aren't shoving cameras in their face, whether or not they want it. And that's one thing, but being able to go and tell stories. And what my shows evolved into was restaurants were the rock stars for the past 10 years or 15, whatever it is. And it was all the chefs, these guys. But the chefs ain't shit unless they're getting the quality ingredients. Whether Farmer Keith is growing the most amazing garlic, and ranchers with the beef, or whatever it is, the best zucchini in the world. The artist can't do anything without a really handsome palette of things to work with. So I want to be able to say, and what I have been starting to do is showcase that, and how just get involved in our food system and get people to just get off the couch a little bit, get involved with their food. If you have a problem with meat, maybe you should, you know what I mean? If the idea of killing an animal for your benefit, for your consumption of food bothers you, hey, more power to you, man. Don't do it. But if you're going to go and eat meat, if you're going to go and buy that real clean package of pork chop without a face, you damn well better not have a problem with the people who are doing the hard work and doing it on their own to feed their families. And I mean that with the most respect to people who do have a problem. It's just a matter of understanding, right? And I mean, that's a rabbit hole we can go down with, but at the end of the day, any video I ever made of hunting or showing that process, a mutual friend of ours, which you brought up, Elias, one of the first videos I ever did for Bon Appetit, or Condé Nast for that matter, was me and him went pheasant hunting, and we shot birds, we cleaned them, we gutted them by ourselves. And you know what? And corporate lawyers were freaking out. They were really concerned. How is this going to be received? I said, guys, it's a matter of how we package it. No one, what we're going to learn is that no one likes factory farms. No one likes mistreating of animals. And I don't like people that do, and that what I've learned in the hunting world is that's quite the opposite of what a good hunter, a respectable, responsible hunter is doing out in the field. That animal lived a wild, full, true life right until I swiftly ended it rather quickly and used just about every part of that animal's body to feed my family. If you have a problem with that, you have a problem with the world. You have a problem with existence, with Earth. I hate to tell you. So just showcasing that in a respectful way. And if that does bother you, hey, go eat plants. Go. And I support that, and I do too. Point of the matter being, don't remove yourself and let someone else do the ugly work, and then judge people for doing what we like to do.
It's really interesting when I get criticisms about hunting from the culinary community, and it doesn't happen all that often, but when it does happen, I guess I pay special attention to making sure that person understands the entirety of the situation to the best extent that I'm able to explain it. Much the same as what you just did. This is just how things work, and to try and figure out which part of this is the part that you have a problem with. And let's talk about that and see if maybe there's a misunderstanding. And if there's not, then go ahead and live your life like that. I just want to make sure everybody has all the information. When you did that project with Eli and the pheasant hunt, how was that received?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I kind of just lost my train of thought on that as I was talking. It was 100% positive. Vegans, vegetarian, in every community and people of of any concern were so positively responsive to that. And just basically showcasing and saying what I said, like, no one really wants to mistreat animals. And like, if you do have yeah, it was just kind of how we worded it and packaged it. It's kind of hard to argue with. And like, being a champion of positivity and love myself, amongst strangers and just in general, listen, you're not going to make everyone happy, and that's okay. And maybe I pissed you off and you unfollowed me, but maybe in 6 months you'll have a change, and maybe you'll rewatch the video and like have a little change of mind, or maybe not, and like, just having that exposure and having, yeah, it was unbelievably positive, and they allowed me to do more hunting. And I mean, to be honest, I'm super grateful for that, and it's good for them too. It's good for everyone, because outside of cities and even in cities, listen, I know people that have no interest and never will shoot a deer in their life, but they know Uncle Mike up in the Catskills, who every time they see him gives them a frozen bag of venison or something, like, and they eat it, and it's a beautiful thing, and like, man, this tasted, it was just so rich. And most people just don't know what to do with it. They're a little intimidated, just like any type of cooking. You give someone who never cooked a side of halibut before, and they're not going to know what to do with it, So it's just familiarizing it, and I love being a part of that change and that movement, where for the longest time it was, your hunters are we drink our beer can, we throw it in the back of the truck if you're lucky. We're shooting signs and hoorah all the time, and it's just like so much more, and it's so much more beautiful than that. And some of the most beautiful, intelligent people I know are avid hunters and conservationists. And and I'm jumping around a little bit, but like, it's been very positive.
Did you ever read the books by Tom Brown Jr. about tracking?
No.
Man, I came across these back in high school or maybe earlier. There's a series of books written by this guy named Tom Brown Jr., and he grew up in New Jersey in the Pine Barrens. And they are as good as anything that's ever been written about the art of tracking animals. And
wow.
I probably read 4 of these things. And throughout all this, I was like, there's no way this dude's from New Jersey. Like, the New Jersey that I'm aware of at this point in my life cannot possibly have anything like this. But that's completely wrong, because there is a very healthy hunting contingent in New Jersey.
Yeah. And I mean, and if you want to talk about populations, I mean, where I grew up, about the opposite of the Pine Barrens, I grew up in the northernmost part of New Jersey, up where in the Appalachian Trails, Delaware Water Gap, bordering New York, Pennsylvania. And I grew up right next to a state park. It's called Wawayanda State Park. And that is where they brought all the trapped bears that were causing problems in the state. And New Jersey, I think, has one of the most densely populated black bear populations, to my knowledge. And
some big ones.
It was a problem. It's some monsters, man. I've seen 500 pounders cruising that didn't give a shit about anything, and like the problem was, it's just there's too many people, you know what I mean? It's not even it's not the bear's fault. It's just that we have, several million people crammed into one of the smallest states that just used to be primo real estate for black bears, habitat for black bears. So we ruined all their habitat and crushed them into these little spots. Yeah, no wonder there's a problem. The problem's us.
Yeah, but we're not going away.
No.
And we've got to figure this stuff out. We've all got to figure out how to function together, all these different organisms. And sometimes that means that one organism shoots another one and eats it. and it's okay. It's okay.
Right.
So, okay, I want to get into some things that people can do with the meat that they're harvesting along the lines of fermentation, and help people understand that and not be afraid of it. And I don't want people to think, oh, you just let meat get moldy and then you roll the dice, because that's really not it.
No, that's a great way to ruin your entire animal and not do a service to the animal that you just killed. So if you are going to talk about hanging or aging animals or anything, you really you got to do a little research, read some books. It's all about a controlled atmosphere. You need the right temperature, the right humidity, and you really need air circulation. Okay. Like, it's not a matter of just like, yeah, you can hang it in your garage on a cold February for a week and get away with it. But if you really want to like reap the mass benefits of a longer term aging, you gotta put in the work, and you have to set up a chamber to where you could do that. But like, given that's coming from, Northeast New Jersey and Northeast, just this whole, area, I'm sure there's places where there are sheds where people can very comfortably hang their deer for, like you were saying, for a good amount of time comfortably. So I guess it's just understanding and doing the homework of what you are trying to do and achieve, as far as aging and hanging an animal, and then ways you can use food to just complement it. I mean,
yeah, that's huge, right?
I mean, if you can get, whether you can harvest some wild, a deer yourself, or some venison, or some, some wild birds or a duck or something, it's just, try to utilize as much as you can. I mean, for better or worse, I know plenty of guys that just breast out pheasants and ducks and didn't want nothing to do with the rest of the, I mean, the legs, don't even get me started, but what about the carcass? Like you can make fantastic stock and using the whole animal, and just, and I'm not necessarily saying you got to go scraping the fat behind the eyeballs, but like do a little research of what the animal it is you're consuming, and try to just be respectful to it and try to utilize it. There's one thing that was instilled to me as a young kid, and I'm passing on to my kids now, is like, you don't ever shoot something that you're not going to eat. And my dad like very seriously told me that, and like it always stuck with me. And it's, it's not a bad thing to, I mean, I'm sure there's certain scenarios where it wouldn't apply, but like, yeah, hell yeah. For the most part, I'd say 99% of the time, that's a damn good mantra to live by. So understanding your animal, what you want to do with it. And then it's just basically, whether it's a pheasant or it's a deer, just like a beef or a chicken, you can just cook, just eat, like people have been doing this for a long time. And as far as fermentation goes, the biggest thing that I ever tell people, if you're interested in fermenting things that could go with just about anything, a perfectly seared medium duck breast, or venison chili, or whatever it is, pheasant fajitas, make some sauerkraut. It's simple. It's salt, a little garlic. I always promote a little pepper, but it's really just salt and cabbage. Okay. And you pack it into a jar or a vessel, and you can let it hang out at room temperature, just like you might do with your deer body, and in a maybe cooler one, but like you let it hang out, and it's a real old world thing. It ties in beautifully. And like, I tell you what, you cook up a nice steak. Not enough people use sauerkraut. It's like people, you put it on your bratwurst or on your hot dog. I eat sauerkraut 5 times a week. We make meatloaf with a little rice. We eat meatloaf with a little rice. Everyone's getting a little scoop of sauerkraut, or you have a little chili or something. It's just that, why not layer it in? And it's tangy, it's salty, it's got a nice vegetal crunch. It's loaded with microorganisms that are going to be beneficial and helpful in you breaking down all that meat you just consumed. So it's just like, it goes hand in hand. And there's a reason why every culture has a version of it. Kimchi, sauerkraut, I mean, you name it. It's because it's awesome and it's super beneficial. So I think it plays hand in hand perfectly. And I mean, that lactic acid, that sourness, it's like vinegar, like anything fermenting as lacto-fermented vegetables, you apply that to just even a simple steak, a little sliced up backstrap or something. It complements it beautifully. And I can't help but think, because it is so tied into such an old world, you know what I mean? Like, for me, it does something for me. I mean, that type of protein alone, it feeds my body and soul much differently than a very unhealthy cow or lamb, or pig for that matter. And then when you make your own fermented vegetables or pickles or whatever, and you consume it with that, I mean, it's not that I'm not trying to go live in the woods by myself necessarily yet, but like, it's just a beautiful way. You could do that in the city. You could do that anywhere and just be connected to your food more.
Yeah, that's something that I think is a big difference between people that just, cook, and then people who are cooking professionally. Is professionals are trying to figure out which of these foods go together, and how does that change the entire experience, compared with like, okay, I made potatoes and they go on this part of my plate, and I made backstrap and it goes on this part of my plate, and maybe there's some broccoli over here, so the lady in the house won't yell at me. whatever. But
Right.
there's a lot more that you can do, and figuring this stuff out that you can do on your own is so satisfying. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
And fermentation is all around us. Like we take a lot of things for granted that are fermented, and use them in all kinds of aspects of our lives.
I mean, it's really the base, the foundation of umami, right? Which is that depth, that big flavor, that like can't put a finger quite on it, but it's awesome. Little funky, it's umami. And I believe umami comes from fermentation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Umami is a fairly new thing, right? At least for Western culture to be talking about.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a relatively, past 20 years, 10 years, very buzzy word. And it became like this new, you have sour, you have sweet, you have salty, you have bitter, you also have umami now. It's like, this is like 6 cents or whatever, on the tongue, and a sense of taste. And yeah, I mean, you say new, yeah, it is new in that sense, but my God, it's the oldest,
Yeah.
It's been around. I mean, it was just like any fermented thing or anything really. It was probably found out by accident, just like bread or booze or sauerkraut. Someone neglected something, and nature has its ways, man. Nature doesn't care, never has.
And this process of bacteria breaking things down, it does all kinds of things for aiding digestion and making something more digestible even before we begin to eat it. And it makes sense to me from an evolution standpoint that something that tastes good, that has a positive reaction to our palate, does so because that's something that our body's craving, that we should be eating. If something tastes bad, that's probably not something that we should be eating. And I know it's more complicated than that, but if you go to a time where people didn't have access to information, right? All they had was what they'd been taught by the previous generation within their tribe. They really had to base it on their own personal experiences a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like that's a good point you mentioned. Is like, and one of the things I always try to tell people and myself is like, listen to your body, because it talks to you in a lot of ways, especially through the gut. Like there's a lot of studies that think your gut controls a lot of your urges and thoughts and processes. And yeah, and like there are times where very often where it's like, yeah, when I find myself pretty good at listening to my body, where it's like, man, I've been eating a lot of this, or like, I need something fermented, and like, I can't help but think that it is like, and I think that's what you were saying. It is embedded in our DNA as a species. It's been passed down.
Yeah. We have trillions of bacteria within our body, and those bacteria, help us consume food. They do all kinds of these important bodily functions, but they are also created in part by the types of foods that we eat. So it makes all the sense in the world to me, simplistically, that the, bacon and eggs bacteria that are in my body want me to eat bacon and eggs every day,
Exactly. And the same applies to eating Chips Ahoy cookies and Coca-Cola, right? Like,
Yep.
And that's why we have a massive problem in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the Chips Ahoy microbiome has a vote.
Feed me, keep it going, more fucking soda, right? And it's just shove it in your face. And it's like, and yeah, it's like you get an instant satisfaction. But once you break that and you kill off that and you nurture the other ones that are supporting you being a very proactive, healthy, alert. I mean, I've never had more energy in my freaking life. Like my wife thinks there's something wrong with me. I'm bouncing off the walls. I've never been more productive. And like, I can't help but think it is tied to diet.
Yeah. No.
Amongst other things.
Sure.
I'm also a maniac, but like amongst other things.
What's your hunting future look like?
Yeah, man. So I'm looking to move up. I bought a farmhouse, an old farmhouse up in coastal Connecticut, and
cool.
Got a
Congratulations.
a little bit. Thanks, man. A little bit of acreage to it, and a lot of deer, a lot of turkeys, and I got some friends up there who have managed some really awesome lands up there. It's just awesome duck hunting, turkey hunting, deer hunting. So, turkey and duck should be coming up in the spring and stuff, and squirrels and rabbits. Hopefully, I'm going to be getting out to in May, doing a little bit of work with the folks over at with the meat eater folks, we might be doing a little spear fishing, some freshwater spear fishing, which could be really cool. Really cool. And then there was a talk of a buddy of mine, Jeff Raleigh, who's a pro skateboarder out in he's in LA now, and he's a big time hunter, and he works with a few outfits that do a lot of bighorn sheep repopulation and conservation work, and also hunting. And he was talking to me a little bit about like maybe doing having the opportunity to go out and do a bison hunt where all the meat would be donated and set up with a school system within a Native American reservation, to where, we could donate all the meat with them and they could process it, use it to feed, their people. And I mean, for me, being, a tall white guy, last thing I want to go do shoot is some wild buffalo, and that's just a bad look. And it's not necessarily something I need to do. But when it comes to that and that kind of deliverance of it, I mean, bison meat's a beautiful thing. That just sounds like a really fun hunt to me. And then just bow hunting, man. I'm really looking forward to getting into my own tree stand and my own land, and watching my own animals and managing them. And I want to grow, and just really just managing my own plot of land, and seeing deer and come, and being able to be a little choosy, and just trying to help the herd, for lack of better description, and just kind of grow a nice population around me.
That's going to be really fun. That's going to be so much fun and have so much learning. You're going to have a blast.
Yeah, man. And I got a good community that's going to be able to help me too, which is everything. And then back to my boys, there's some a lot of little rabbits and squirrels, and, being able to just take the boys out for a walk, and maybe we shoot a squirrel and we break it down together, and, and like, I love seeing them. They're just like, they came pre-programmed with interest in it. You know what I mean? Like, just like back to fermentation, it's like there's certain things that are just embedded in our DNA, and society and modern life kind of really clouds it. And for a lot of people, and you tend to forget, not much has changed since, other than technology, in the past 400 years for people. I mean, like, that being said, yeah, I do think there are big, strives in culture and in people, for that matter. But like, what I'm getting at is, like, evolutionarily, we're not much different. Like, scientists would tell you better, but like, really not much different at all than like what we were 500, 600, 700 years ago. Technology just went like this.
Yeah, no, it's definitely within us. And I like to play this little experiment when I have people who've never shot a bow before. You can put a target a long ways away, like 100 yards away, and give them a long bow, recurve, and say, try and shoot that milk jug. And people will come shockingly close on the first bow shot of their life to actually achieving this almost impossible shot.
Before they start thinking about it. They've got a long downhill after that before they can start climbing back up. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And Fred Bear said that the history of the bow is the history of mankind. And it's totally true. Like, this one piece of technology was as pivotal as fire for the development of humans.
Right.
Absolutely incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And we all exist. Every single one of us exist because our ancestors were good at using a bow and arrow, period.
Right.
Absolutely amazing.
God, that's fascinating, man. I love that.
I do think that people have it in them. We do. We have to. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it. And you take my black lab, and obviously she's a different thing. Like, she's a creation. Black labs they didn't evolve. Right. They were bred really quickly. But when she was 10 weeks old, the first time she heard a gunshot, back to your train a puppy point earlier, I shot a bird out of a tree with the 22, and she ran over and got it and brought it back to me. She's 10 weeks old. Like, that is
pre-program.
Yeah, right. That was the factory settings. Like, she already had it in her, and we have that kind of stuff in us too.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And I couldn't agree more. So like, yeah, being able to show these new things with my kids and just kind of pass that information, and kind of not even pass it, because it seems like a lot of it is kind of even there, right? But just like help nourish it and help kind of shine a light on it is really exciting. And for me, I grew up hunting and fishing with my dad and stuff, and some friends. I got into high school and started chasing other things, and as I got a little older, and had kids, especially, man, like it's like something that like punched me in the stomach, like this call to get back to it and like the importance of it. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be getting back into the hunting thing. Whether it's archery or firearms, I'm really into both of it.
That's great, man. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your boys to have that opportunity that you're making for them. They're going to be able to grow up a little bit more feral than they might if they're in New York City. And
That's right.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
That's important, man. It's part of what made me the person I am. And I'm just trying to return the favor to my kids. It's a responsibility.
Cool. Well, I'm going to be here to help you with any of your future shooting stuff questions that you have. And I'm always going to have cooking stuff questions for you. And
well, that's good, man.
Look forward to getting together and going on a hunt together. And maybe we can drag Eli out and go with us. That guy, I'm going to have him on the podcast here at some point. Oh, what a treasure of a human.
He is one of my favorite people in the world. And I was just talking to him yesterday about kind of the similar stuff we were talking about today. And he's already like looking, he wants to buy a ticket and come out. He's like, Brad, I'll bring my hammer. We'll build something. I'll call turkeys with the boys. And like, I can't. And like, I mean this to you too, man. Open door policy. If you're ever out that way and you need somewhere to stay and just hang out, man, like open door. I'll bring you fishing, bring you hunting. And that's what it's all about. And I mean, and like on top of that, I'm going to be setting it up to where I'm going to be making my own YouTube shows and podcasts there. And yeah, man, this is just the beginning of a relationship.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see what the future holds for you and look forward to getting out there and seeing what you're building. It's going to be amazing.
Same, man. Thank you.
How can people find out more about you? Where can they follow what Brad Leone has going on?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, I make videos for if you're looking for a video, it's YouTube for Bon Appétit right now. Just different types of things. It's Alive with Brad. And then on Instagram, I share a lot of the stuff, a lot more of the stuff like we're talking about through my Instagram for now. And it's Brad_Leone on Instagram. Shouldn't be a problem.
Cool. All right. Well, folks, highly encourage you to go follow this guy. Amazing information and always entertaining.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure. It was mine.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the show. This episode was edited by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Artwork for the Six Ranch podcast was created by John Chatterlin and digitized by Celia Christofferson. If you enjoyed the show, I encourage you to share it with a friend and subscribe. You can find photos and more content on Instagram at Six Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.